What is the problem with critical race theory? Well, there's a number of them, but in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about intersectionality. What is it, and should you accept it? So stick around to figure it out. Hey guys, I'm William Dyer. This is DyerConversations. Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Now, I've done some other episodes on critical race theory. They're part of a playlist. I'll link them on the screen right now and put them in the description below so you can check them out to get a fuller picture of what critical race theory is and why I think that you should reject it. So what is intersectionality? Well, intersectionality, according to the Encyclopedia of Diversity and Social Justice, says this, and I quote, "Our experiences of the social world are shaped by our ethnicity, race, social class, gender identity, sexual orientation, and numerous other facets of social stratification." So right off the bat, what they're saying is, look, the way we view the world and the way we kind of base our view of reality is going to be on the foundation of the different social structures that we're a part of. So are you male or female? Are you black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever it is? Are you upper class, middle class, lower class? All those are going to determine what you believe about this world. Now, with everything that is false, there's always an element of truth to that, right? So will your nurturing, right, how you're brought up and, what country you live in and all that sort of other stuff have some sort of impact on what you believe? Absolutely. But does it absolutely determine what you believe? No, absolutely not. Because people will say, well, Western civilization was built on Christian ideals, which is historically true. However, not everybody in Western civilization is a Christian. Or you take people in India, right? That is mostly like a Buddhist country, yet there are Christians there. People who are born in India, yet have become Christians. So, yes, your social status or your ethnicity, your race, your class, all that stuff do have impacts on what you believe, but it doesn't dictate what you believe. Let's go on with the quote. They say some social locations afford privilege, example, being white, while others are oppressive, example, being poor. Okay, now this has all sorts of stuff wrong with it. First of all, a location that affords privilege is being white. Now, that's absolutely ridiculous because I can tell you right now that in the place that I live, some of the most underprivileged people are those who are white. I mean, right here, to me, this is a racist statement. To say that all white people automatically have privilege because of their race is a racist statement and just out of touch with reality. Now, to give you some context, as we've talked about in earlier episodes, what they most likely mean by that, and I'm not trying to put too much emphasis or read too much between the lines, but what they most likely mean by that is because you're white and because America is built on these social institutions and systemic structures that are supposed to give privilege to white people, that you're going to inherently have privilege, and we've talked about that in earlier episodes. But notice here as well how they juxtapose, on one hand being white, and then on the other hand being poor. Now, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, leave your comments below, but the opposite of poor is not white. The opposite of poor is being rich. So why is it that they put all those who have privilege as white and all those who are oppressed as being poor? You have to note that because this is the sort of view that they're coming with, and this is going to dictate what they believe. Let's go on with the quote. It says, "These various aspects of social inequality do not operate independently of each other. They interact to create interrelated systems of oppression and domination." So again, what they're saying here is all the different categories that you could fit into, whether you're male or female, or whether you identify as, some other gender or no gender at all, your race, your ethnicity, your social class, all that stuff is not independent. They all work together, hence intersectionality. How do they intersect? To go on, the concept of intersectionality refers to how these various aspects of social location, quote, intersect to mutually constitute individuals' lived experiences. So again, what they're saying here is intersectionality is about how do you fit into these different categories? How do they intersect to make you an oppressed person in this world? Now, Delgado and Stefankic, another book that I've quoted a lot in this podcast series, define intersectionality as, quote, an examination of race, sex, class, national origin, and sexual orientation, and how their combination plays out in various settings. Now, if you don't just take this at face value, but actually examine it and critique it as you should with everything that you believe, you'll realize that intersectionality actually creates this really weird dilemma, which I don't think that anybody has answered, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. And the dilemma is, who wins? Who is the most oppressed person or oppressed category? So what I mean by that is this. You have these different categories by which you get to say that you're an oppressed person, right? Are you female instead of a male? Are you black or Latino or Asian or whatever minority instead of white? Are you homosexual or some sort of, non-cisgender person, right? Sexual categories fall into this as well. You get all these categories that make you part of an oppressed person, but what happens when different oppressed people meet each other? Who gets to win? Who's the most oppressed? Let me give you an example. Who is more marginalized in this example? A straight black female born in the upper class or a homosexual white male born in the ghettos of Chicago? You see, on one hand, you have a female, and the other hand, you have a male, so clearly she's more oppressed than him if you buy into intersectionality. But wait a second. She's straight, and he's homosexual. But she's black, and he's white. But he's born in the ghettos, and she has the privilege of money because she's born in the upper middle class. So what should we do with intersectionality? Well, we should reject it. Number one, because it's completely subjective. You remember earlier in the first quote, we talked about how it's based on our experiences, our lived experiences, right? Well, here's the deal. Reality is based on objective truth. Truth is what corresponds to reality. 2 + 2 = 4. It does not matter what your lived experience says. Your lived experience might tell you that your math teacher taught you 2 + 2 = 5. Doesn't matter. 2 + 2 = 4 regardless of your lived experience because that's objective standards. Intersectionality is based on subjective lived experiences. So that leads us to the second point, which is intersectionality is internally contradictory. This is the examples that I gave you about who is the most oppressed person, right? As all of these different categories come together, what happens if we change Delgado and Stefankic's illustration and say that the white male boss is a homosexual? Well, he's an oppressed person too, right? So now we have two different oppressed categories. You can be an oppressed person, but also an oppressor. Yeah, my mind boggles, and it just leads to all sorts of internal contradictions. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Make sure to leave your comments and questions below and understand this. I know that this is just a broad overview of critical race theory, intersectionality, and all this sort of other stuff. This is not meant to be some sort of college course debunking the whole thing. I'm trying to present to you the basic facts so you can do your own research and make up your own mind. But as far as my concern is, from what I've studied, I reject it. And these were the reasons why.